Welcome back to Beyond the Monsters, and today I have Trevor Beaman. Trigger warning: sexual assault, abuse, suicidal ideation, drug use, violence, and other explicit content. And you know what? There's so much about this guy that you have to introduce yourself and just tell us all about Trevor.
All right, Shell, thanks for having me here in Nashville. Gets me out of town for a little bit. All right, I'm Trevor Beaman. I was born, raised in South Bend, Indiana. Grew up loving Notre Dame football. And then I moved to northern Chicago when my mom got remarried and stayed up there until I went to college. I joined the Army when I was in school in December of 2000 and went to Afghanistan a few times, became a Green Beret, and became a father and husband, and have two kids and living a pretty cool life now in Western Florida, and I'm about to retire from the Army, about 24 and a half years.
Wow.
Of doing this thing. And
so you haven't done much.
Not much.
Yeah.
But it's but what brings me here today is this idea of beyond the monster, and what that can kind of look like and feel like as a kid that grows up being sexually abused by your stepfather and having a monster there, then having a monster from addiction and alcohol and substance abuse, having that monster there, then having a monster from suicide ideations, and also the loss of friends from war, the loss of friends from their own hands, and then like those monsters that are there, then seeing my children be born and having them in my life, and then feeling those monsters every day and asking questions about like, how does this even begin?
Right.
And so it's there's a lot that builds up in your brain over time about what these constructed things that start to build up, walls or compartmentalized things that make life either harder or easier, and it kind of sways back and forth throughout time. But the beginning of it is where we'll start, and we'll build on it, and how all those separate things kind of were added to either relieve pain or forget about life or try to just manage my day-to-day and the different things that I did and encountered, and therapies and rehabs and these things, and what they did individually to get me onto this like healing journey and this path of like happiness, love, and this idea that humanity is worth fighting for, and to try to become this like beacon of hope for others. And so,
and I just want to make sure that I thank you, and I'll probably thank you 100 times, for coming on and talking about this, because I know for some reason, I know for guys in general, what I've seen is it's harder for men to tell real stories like this. And I can just imagine how many people are going to relate to your story.
So I don't think it's necessarily difficult. They just don't practice it.
Right.
That's it. And after you say it a few times and get it out, it doesn't seem so painful or so judgmental, or I'm not a real man, or like that. I think those are real feelings.
Right.
But I think as you practice it and show it, and you don't feel like you're going to be judged or something's wrong with you, or like, how could you ever live with that and have all those different feelings inside after you like let it out enough and breathe through it and open up And you just be like, like what I'm doing matters.
Right.
Because I'm actually saying something, and it matters to them, but it all really matters to me, because it feels like every time I discuss these things that happened to me and the way it made me feel, it doesn't hurt as much.
Right.
Right. That knife that person has in my heart isn't as sharp. And it just gets duller and duller. And then one day it's gone. And you're like,
Right.
I did it. Because I was able just to tell someone how I feel.
Right.
And what happened to me. And there's nothing more than just a story and feelings together. And for me, that's why we write books.
Right.
It's because everything.
Speaking of,
yeah, I wrote a book.
we'll talk about that too. Take us down the road. Let us know.
So before I'm even born,
Okay.
there's some stuff that happens that's really important.
Okay.
So my mom's growing up. Her dad was in the World War II and got 2 Purple Hearts. He got injured twice in Germany. He came back home and he was a truck driver and was gone a lot. And my mom was stuck home with her mom. And my mom was more as treated like a pet than a child.
Okay.
And my grandmother, who passed away before I was born, just didn't give the love that my mom needed. And while my mom was growing up, one of her cousins raped her. So and so then she doesn't get love and acceptance from her mom, and she's abused by a man in an early age. And now my father, his father, my grandfather, was at Omaha Beach. And to think about that, like going into Normandy and to come home from that, my dad was treated poorly and he wasn't seen a lot. He would be locked in closets. He'd be on sports teams and he wouldn't get any recognition. So my dad had a lot of anger inside. And I think my mom has, from what she went through,
I was just going to say your mom too. She had to have a lot of anger.
I think she just has a lot of sadness inside of her because of those things.
Sure.
And so my parents meet, and my mom at the post office in South Bend, and my mom's like the first mail handler, and they just connect and all this stuff. And I think my grandfather ends up buying them a plot of land on the outside the city. And so I have an older brother who's 15 months older than me. So my brother's born, and then I am. And it seems, as what I know, like everything is okay. But as I'm growing up, my mom tells me that my father's really angry and abusive.
To her.
And that he has thrown her downstairs, and she has all these back problems, hip problems because of my father.
How old are you now
So I'm only 1 year old at this point.
Okay.
Right. And so we're just beginning here.
Yeah.
And she, after years later, I'm talking 30, 40 years later, I'm 44 now. So this is when I was 39. I find out my father actually caught my mom in bed with his best friend.
Oh.
Shit. All right. So that event happens, which I didn't know. Right. And so
Right.
there's many, many, many decades of my mom telling me and my brother that my dad's a monster.
Dad's horrible. Right. Right.
And so my parents get divorced, and I was under the assumption majority of my life that my mom took us from our father.
Okay.
And
because he was terrible.
Moved on. Right.
Right.
Later on, I find out that my dad actually is the one who took us, and my mom did not want us at all.
Oh.
And so this is 1982. And my dad's still working at the post office, and he's not a mail handler. He works inside, like with all the electronics, all the different type of sorting machines and stuff like that. So he does that. So he has to go to a lot of training in Oklahoma. So he's gone.
He's traveling.
And so he's traveling, and he reached out to his family saying, "Can you help me with my 2 boys?" And they said no. And his mom, because my dad's dad dies of a heart attack, and so he's not in the picture. And so it would be my grandmother on my dad's side that was trying to help my dad raise us. Okay. And she said, "It's too much. These kids, I can't do it." So my dad ends up giving us back to my mom. So my mom, a super prideful woman of all the things, she goes on to welfare. We move into the projects. My brother and I are essentially the only two white kids that are there. Mm-hmm. But even though we were in this small apartment that had cockroaches, we have beds that are on the ground, like, she still figures out a way to go to nursing school and to graduate from that.
It's just the 3 of you at this point. Yeah. Right? There's nobody helping or.
So that's great. Lead into what is another person that is introduced into my life.
Okay.
And this man is in South Bend, and he comes there to become a priest at St. Mary's across the street from Notre Dame University.
Okay.
And I haven't got an answer on how my parents, or like how my mom meets this man. Nothing. I don't know.
And you're not seeing dad at all at this point?
Very little. Like, okay. This is like still, I'm like 3-4 years old. And all I can think about, or that I have knowledge about, is that my mom meets this really Catholic man that wants to help raise her boys. And it's on and off. He comes and helps our family when she has to do stuff. I don't know. This is before I can remember anything. I have no idea about what this guy is doing in her house or anything like that. But she graduates, and then we move out of the projects because she's making money. She's able to afford more. So we move to another home. And that's like preschool-ish. I remember, like, I got held back. School is severely difficult for me. I don't know. I'm like one of the things that you could be looked at, ADHD.
Yeah.
It's probably some type of disorder, something, learning, cognitive, something, there's something there that's, I'm not picking up what's going on in school. It's really, really hard for me. So I'm held back. And at that, my mom is working in the ER in the hospital, and we have babysitters that are like kind of not like what I think of babysitters now. This is like evil witches that my mom would hire to come watch us, that would like
some sketchy
spank
people,
us and like treat us like shit, and like chase around the house with like sticks and shit, like kind of thing, right? Like not actually like that, but like just like people that are really happy at all, kind of thing. And it's so
nothing.
You shouldn't
warm
be watching
and fuzzy.
Kids.
Yeah.
But we moved on through that, and so then we moved to another house in town, and it's like a picturesque neighborhood. All the kids are out playing. Everyone's riding their bikes everywhere. And this is 1985, 86, and kids are just out all day. Like what we want in America is like nothing will happen to them.
Right.
It's great, and we all have friends that we spend weekends with and sleepovers, and it's awesome. Like we're just have this. It feels very beautiful life, like we've made it. Right. That's what I feel inside.
Like, did you have that feeling of like, okay, this is home?
Yeah,
this
I was like,
feels like home.
I'm pride. I have pride
Yeah.
where I live. Mm-hmm. And it was cool. And then my dad, it was just like every other weekend we would spend, time with our dad. But my house with my mom was vastly different than the house at my dad's. I actually got to see the anger in my father come out, but it wasn't ever at me or my brother.
Okay.
It was never put a hand on either of us. He would throw shit around the house and fucking destroy it.
Right.
That's how he
Kind
dealt
of like
with
a
his
temper
anger.
tantrum. Like,
Now as a father, I feel it
right.
and I understand like how that could be so overwhelming. Guy didn't have any coping skills with stress.
For sure.
That's it.
Right.
And it felt like he just married his work. And so there was trash in his house and beer cans everywhere and all that. But even with all the filth and everything, our bedrooms were immaculate where me and my brother stayed. He cared about us. He just didn't care about himself.
Right.
And he didn't I think he maybe got a little broken from all of the losing his kids and not being able to be there for him. But so my mom continues to date other men during this whole time.
Okay.
And she meets a firefighter who one night decides that he's going to kill her. And he tries to shoot her with like a buckshot shotgun on our second floor of our house. And it goes through she doesn't die or she doesn't get injured or anything, but it goes through our house into the next house.
Oh, geez.
And nothing happens. Nobody gets hurt. But I'm
Hold
away
on.
with my dad.
So how long were these two dating? Like,
I don't know. Maybe
because you're
like
still
6
really
months.
young.
I have
Yeah.
no idea.
Were they fighting and stuff like that?
But it wasn't
Don't
never
remember.
around me and my brother.
Okay.
We were never home when she would be with other people. Like she didn't bring people into the home.
Oh, so
when
you
I
guys
was
weren't
there.
home?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. But I come home to this, and my mom's like, Mario tried to kill me. And I'm like, what? And I'm in second grade. So the man my mom had met years before that asked her for the 7th time if he can marry her. And now I believe my mom is so broken and so tired of being abused or fearful for her kids. I think she just gives in. Mm-hmm. I don't think it was for love
Security,
or anything
maybe,
like that. I think that it was stability. Mm-hmm. And so she married this man. She moved me and my brother away from our Pisgah, like beautiful home, because she was running. Mm-hmm. She was running from all the things that scared her that was in that house. And I get now, I understand how you want to take your kids away from all of that.
Mm-hmm. I totally get that. That was me too. I did that.
So I'm like, I understand that now, but when I was a kid, like you just took me from my dad.
Yeah.
For this guy who's on the surface is everything you would want. As we moved to Glenview in the northern suburb of Chicago, we moved back into the projects because it's so wealthy there. They couldn't afford a new, back then it's probably like $800,000 home.
Right.
Like there was no, my mom wasn't making enough money and he definitely didn't have any type of skills or anything like that. Like the guy wanted to be a priest.
Right.
And it's totally confusing because we move into this 2-bedroom apartment from this, 4-bedroom home. I'm like,
Out
what?
where kids are playing and you're actually
now,
having a normal life.
The normal life turns back into like, there's this like transitory people living in apartments. There's lots of gang banging. There's drug use. There's domestic violence. There's all of those are happening around us. But so then I'm like third grade, and that's like 8 years old. That's 1988, and it's going to be like around I don't know, October, November timeframe is where my life starts to completely change. And I'm in this bedroom. My mom's working. She's 11 to 7 in the ER. And my mom doesn't know what this man's about to do to her son, right? And it's the thing about trauma that's really fucked up is that this moment feels like it did when I was 8 years old. Mm-hmm. So I get that how you don't want to talk about it, or you don't want to relive it, because it's hard, and a lot of different therapies and stuff kind of get into this, and Reiki kind of relive some stuff, and it helps you out. So I'm in this bed, and why I know it's the wintertime, because I can see the crystals on the window forming at night. Mm-hmm. I feel, and we're on a water bed, and I feel like the water moving around me, like almost like I can feel like that plasticness of the water bed, like on my skin as mm-hmm. I'm laying in this bed. The hardest part about this moment that I've ever had to deal with is that I could have got up and ran away. I could have fought. But I didn't do either of those. I just did nothing. I just laid there with my eyes closed as this man slowly touched my body. And I can hear the aquarium bubbler going off. I can feel his breath on my body. I can feel his stubble of his goatee and beard on my body moving around. But this moment it doesn't hurt. I'm not like grossed out, or I'm just feeling all the touches throughout my whole entire body. And when this man finally touches my penis, it's such an exhilarating feeling that I've never had in my life. Mm-hmm. And to be pleasured by another person is one of the basic, wonderful things that we can share with another person. And I was confused. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew I liked it. I knew it felt really good. And that was a slow touch onto my body, and really nothing more than this moment on this bed as an 8-year-old kid. And after he had pleasured himself, he lifted me up and carried me back into my bed, and I went to sleep as if nothing happened.
Like not a word was said,
no.
Anything.
So I'm 8. Year by year, it gets significantly worse. It's no longer just like touching and this, it's penetration.
How often was this happening?
So when the frequency reduced as I got older. So I end up saying it happened about 100 times in about 8 years. He confessed to doing it at least 50 times. But we'll get there. Mm-hmm. Right? So here's, so this happens. It's not painful. It doesn't, I don't get any rashes, pain, nothing on my body. There's no evidence of anything ever happened. It's almost like it's consensual. And and to me, even to today, it feels like that. It feels, if in a loving way, who you would call it, which is kind of gross and everything, it was like caressing a young child because you were in love with them.
Right. I understand that. I mean,
is what it feels like
starting
to me.
at 8 years old, that's, what else would you think?
So after 5th grade, in the summer, I decided I'm going to join the Latin Kings and become a gang member.
Oh, God.
Right. So I get beat into the gang, and just to live this up a bit. And I'm like, I'm going to be a shorty in the Latin Kings because that's what's going around here. And like, all this shit's happening at home. I'm like, I want to be a part of something bigger than me. I want to serve something else because I don't feel included in my house other than kind of, I'm not going to go get to the rape part yet, but I feel like I'm being like taken advantage of.
Right.
And so I get beat into this gang, and I come home and I'm like taking a shower, and I'm like, I walk out of the shower, put a towel on me, and my mom sees my back, and it's a completely bruised, like it got the shit out of me at a 10-year-old kid. And
God,
she calls
10 years old.
Right. So yeah, that's 10. No, it's 8 years old still, right? 8, 9 years old, 9. I'm almost turning 10. I'm going into 6th grade. Right. Yes. So I got my ass kicked. And my mom calls the police on this kids. And she's like, we're going to prosecute him for assault. I'm like, fuck me, man. I'm going to, like, to grow up in a bad neighborhood and prosecuting people. I'm like, my mom doesn't get the streets.
Right.
She doesn't get that now I'm going to have to live with these kids till I leave.
Right.
And like, we got some years here, Mom, before I graduate high school, and I don't have to be around all of this anymore. So my mom decides we're going to move across town, like, to get away from this. So we went from living in this rundown apartment into a trailer park on the other side of town. And like I said, we were living in a very wealthy town. And so now I'm like, I've lived in both of the worst places in this town. Right. And I hate it. I hate that I'm from that fucking place so much, because I go to school and all these kids, Range Rovers, Mercedes, all this.
Right.
And I'm like, I got nothing.
Was depression starting then a little bit, do you think? Okay. Wow.
So this whole time we're like having this family that goes to church. We have family outings. We're traveling. We're doing like, I end up going to cruises to Hawaii and spend time in Sweden. And my mom's very bad with money. They put things like it almost in a very much a manic way, like almost like bipolar, as like I believe I need to go do these things right now, and does them
right
without seeing the consequences of a year later of what these choices are. So my mom is constantly in debt and doesn't do well with finances. I don't even think till today, but so we moved to the trailer park, and the sexual abuse becomes significantly more physical than what I was describing in the bed and in the water bed that I was at, where it kind of all began. And that's, I'm in 6th grade, and it starts to be the penetration of his anus, my penis into his mouth, that he made me perform oral sex on him, into him attempting to rape me. But I was the teeny tiny kid, just not happening. And still this whole time, I'm very like, as if like I am just a puppet for him to use for his own desires. Throughout the time that he was using my body for his pleasure, it just slowly got more and more aggressive, and the duration started to increase longer and longer. So now I'm getting less and less sleep at night. And I think this from like age 10 to 12 is probably the highest frequency of this happening. So
what about your brother, your older brother?
So my brother to this day has said that my stepfather never touched him. I don't know. That's his story to tell.
Right.
And I'm not going to get into his life because that's his to tell, not me. So I make it to 7th grade, and I start to feel like there's this compartmentalized person in my life has now came into my mind. And it feels very much like when I go to school, I put this kid that's being abused into my locker. And I take that mask off, and I take my school mask on, and I'm just a happy kid. Mm-hmm. Nothing's happening to me. But like in the beginning, around October, November timeframe, I was really done with life. And I was home all alone, and I decided that I was going to end my life.
At 10?
I was 12,
10,
12 years old.
12.
So it's 1992. I see myself in the mirror of my parents' bathroom, just crying. I can still feel like the moist skin on my face about how I didn't have anything left in me to live for. It's just all of my soul was dark, fucking just angry, sad. Everything that I had in me wasn't worth fucking living. And so I took 2 weeks of heart control pills of his, some pain medication. I would get completely naked. I run a tub of water. It's nice. It's comfortable. I'm like, fuck it. I slit my wrists. Thank whoever's watching over me or whatever energies in the world that saw me. I didn't do it right. But I had a lot of drugs in my system, and I was really not in a good spot. And
you're in the tub now.
Yeah. And my wrist stopped bleeding, and I'm like, fuck this. Like, I'm not going to stay in here. This is not going to, it's not worth, it's not happening. So I get dried off, and I'm like sitting in our living room, and my mom walks in, like on my couch, like I'm like this. And she fucking looks at me, goes, "What the fuck did you do?" Because I'm like pale, and she knows what's up. And I was like, "I did all this." And she goes, "Oh, great." And so she gives me milk of magnesia, and I just start vomiting everywhere. And she's like, "We got to go to the hospital because there's a lot of things in you that we got to get out from you." So we go to the ER. I get my stomach pumped. I have to drink like this 2 liter of charcoal. Gross, right? Awful. And because of the milk and magnesia, I'm just vomiting it all up. I can't swallow anything. So I get 2 tubes put in me, and they're just like pumping it in, right? It's a shitty experience.
Yeah.
It's fine. Okay.
Were you mad at this point that it didn't work, or what are you feeling? If you remember.
I have to figure out what I'm going to say why I did this.
Okay.
Right? And I conjure up this idea of like, I miss my father. I want my father to be around. Heartbreaking. You'll see. It sucks. So I go to the psych ward. I'm there for a week. My stepfather stays the whole entire time in the room with me while I'm in the hospital.
Of course he did.
Of course he didn't. I didn't like later on I see it more now than I saw it then. And so that's one part of the problem. Next part of the problem, my dad didn't show up. I don't know why, though, at this moment in my life. I don't understand what happened. What I was told is that your dad couldn't find the hospital.
Did they even tell him?
Yeah, my mom told my dad.
Okay.
But she didn't tell him what hospital. So he's driving all the way from South Bend to Chicago to find his son that he can't find. And just gives up and goes home. And that's when I started to lose all hope in my father, because he wasn't there when I needed him.
And of course, you don't know the reality.
Right. Oh, yeah. It's leading.
It sure is.
There's
is.
Lo and behold, there's actually a really cool outcome to this. Like, this story's great.
Okay.
All right. It's really good.
I'll breathe now.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I go back to school. I meet this awesome counselor, Dana, who I would go see. And this is a huge advocate for school counselors, reaching out for kids to at least give them a space to say something, to feel safe. And like there was a woman there for 2 years after I tried to commit suicide that saw me every single week, that was there for me. And she just contacted me recently that she gives a presentation about my life to kids, about being sexually abused, where to touch and not be touched by adults, bullying, all this. So they talk all about all this stuff. And it's kind of cool to have that, to know that I'm still at that same school, 30 years later, I'm making an impact. I'm changing someone's life without even knowing it. Right. And it's pretty cool to know that.
That's awesome.
But at the same time, I'm like, what was that woman thinking about when she got home? About what is a 12-year-old kid trying to kill themselves? And then for her to later on know that this was for her to think about all the questions I could have asked this little kid to get him out of this. Yeah. And she just didn't know.
Well, back then, I mean, 'cause you're a few years younger than me, but I know back then we didn't know what we know now, and it wasn't as public, and people just didn't talk about it as much. Yeah. So I could see why she probably really didn't fully know what to say or do. Yeah.
But experience in writing books and telling stories, maybe you'll ask the kid the right question, even if it makes you feel uncomfortable.
Right. It's important that they do now. I mean,
it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay if you upset somebody because you're wrong.
Right.
Imagine if you're right. And it's I knew it. And I saved a kid's life. Pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, it is.
And so I make it through 7th and 8th grade and on to high school, and then
abuse is still happening.
Yeah.
Stepdad.
And so as I make it into freshman in high school, life changes. Me starts to grow up, puberty and other things are more enjoyable to my eyes than this man abusing me at night. And so I, start dating and having sex with women.
And now I know this is probably a weird question, but was at this point, I mean, you've been abused for so long by a man.
Yeah.
Were you only attracted to women? Girls or whatever?
All right. We can.
Or that might be coming later too.
Yeah. It's not about being attracted to a man or a woman. It's, can you be pleasured by either? It's just, it's difficult, right? It's like, I had questions about my own sexuality because both are awesome. And until it really wasn't, but in the beginning, it feels like it's just like love and touch and like all that is really powerful on my brain and my body.
And you weren't being educated on anything.
No.
So at that point, you're just going by feeling and.
Right. So I can to my eye to look at a man, I don't see anything that's like, this is desire isn't there. But I could see how you could, and even me, could fall in love with a man in the right circumstances.
Okay.
Like if I was a prisoner, if I was on an island and somewhere and there was just another man, if it was me and a man, could I fall in love with a man because that's all I had? I say yes, I can. I think that that is the basic need of a human.
Right.
And if that's there, then you need that connection with another human. It's just, to me,
like you said, it always goes back
basic.
to connection and love and.
Yeah. And so, but that's not my number one thing at all. But if I'm trying to survive and live the next day, then I'm going to enjoy life how I can and what I got. It seems plausible and that it's, I would want to have a partner. I totally get that. And, but there's these things like, am I supposed to be with a man or am I supposed to be with a woman?
Right.
There's years of inner thinking about this, and it's hard and difficult to process those constant thoughts of why do I continue to be with a woman? Maybe I've been happy, I've felt happy from a man. And then but I think that's college life and that moment. I think there's a lot in that time frame when you're trying to maybe 18 to 21, 22, you're trying to figure out that. And I think, but I didn't explore that with a man ever. I've never had a sexual relationship
outside of that abuse. And
so it's nothing I've ever was I must feel it inside me to act upon. Has never happened. And so I meet a gal in high school, and we're together, and I pretty much spend my whole high school years with her, and kind of break off when I go to college. But after my 16th birthday, I start to see what my stepfather is kind of doing with his life that makes me super unsettled inside. He starts to take on hospice care for children with autism and Down syndrome. So these kids can't speak. They can't raise their hand and say, this is happening to me.
Right.
But everything in my heart and soul is like, this motherfucker is fucking these kids.
Right.
And I can't stand for it. Like, I can take what has happened to me and I can live with that forever.
Right.
But I will not allow this man to hurt another fucking child. Mm-hmm. And it's just, it enrages me. And my mom finally sees it, like sees the anger in me. And I don't think she'd ever seen me.
The anger towards him?
Nah,
or was it just angry?
At life.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, and I'm not just some 16-year-old kid that just is like giving hell to their parents, kind of like. And I'm back in front of the same mirror that I was when I was 12 years old. Now I'm 16. My mom walks into the bathroom and she goes, "Is your stepdad fucking you?"
Wait, she just...
That's right, yeah. And I look at her and I say, "You finally, after all these years, asked me the right question." So, like, yeah. It's like in the car now. And we drive around for 3 or 4 hours and I explain and talk to her about all the things that had happened to me through all the years, all the places, churches, vacations, crossed state lines.
Oh, God, this wasn't just at home?
No.
Oh, God.
And so because you say that, I'll deep dive into that church problem. So he worked at a convention center that was also a, like, we'll just say a church, right? And he was like the night custodian. And he would ask me to stay there with him. And so he raped me at the church, right? And as you can imagine, my hope for God and faith is non-existent.
Right.
Based off of what all loving God allows a child to be abused in this manner in his house.
Right.
And that led me on a path of being a non-believer because it just doesn't make sense. And I think there's other things out in this world that I can see and is more truthful to energies of the world, seem to be more impactful to me than God will ever be. Because at a time I needed that there for me, it never showed up.
Never there, right.
I give you a long fucking time to be there. It never came. And still. And so we drive around. I tell her everything and she believes 100%. I feel at that moment on top of the world.
Sure.
These demons, these
let it out.
Monsters, these nasty things that are all out of me. And I fucking feel phenomenal. My mom, though, on another, like,
sure,
probably how you feel right now. It's like, oh my God, what has been happening to my son? How and what do I need to do? So we go to the police station. I sit down with the police officer and I just start writing, telling him what happened, all the different methods of insertion, everything. I explained that, like, this person had ejaculated on my body, on my face, that he's tried to penetrate my anus, that he used my body in a manner that my penis would penetrate him, all of the things, every single thing. And they're like, okay, we're going to go arrest him. They go to my house, they arrest him, he signs a full confession to everything that he did to me. The only thing that's this discretionary difference that there is I said it happened at least 100 times, and he's admitted to doing it 50 times. Okay. And then I finish high school. I graduate early from high school, and he gets on a like $300,000 bail. His folks came up with $30,000 to get him out of jail. I spend the next 2.5 years going to court.
Yeah.
And
he's out this whole time.
Yeah. So I'm in college, and I'm living in a fraternity, a bunch of guys. And as I'm rushing the house is the last proceeding. And it's during our like initiation portion of the. I think this is probably some like 1999. I just turned 19. And I tell this group of guys that I gotta go put the guy who abused me for almost a decade in jail. And I got big hugs, and and they cared about me, and I didn't feel alone.
Well, that was probably
nice.
like the first time that you felt like that.
But at that same time, I discovered drinking. And alcohol made all of those memories disappear. I would just drink to forget it all. Because I didn't understand it. It felt, when drinking, there's this special moment that you have for just a little bit of time. As you're like coming up on drinking, it's nice, it feels good. And then there's this real fucking awesome sweet spot where the world is bliss. But then you have one more drink, and it turns for me sadness and self-hate and almost self-destructive. So every time I drink, I want to get to the part where life is really awesome and I don't remember anything. The problem with alcohol is it wants to kill you if you give it enough time. So I discover alcohol in college, a little bit of cannabis here and there, not really a whole lot. So a little bit of drug use, but not this. That's just alcohol and weed and stuff. College, right? Great time. And so I go to. It's the day to go stand on the stand, and I have to go through all this over again in front of a judge. And as I'm telling my story, knowing that this man had confessed to doing this to me, his mother stands up and goes, "You're a fucking liar." Fuck. How? And I'd like, maybe now as being a father, but I don't think so. I would never stand and defend my child, ever, for committing that horrendous act on a little fucking person. No, I will not be there for you. The judge reads out all the counts, all the aggravated sexual assault, first degree, second degree, all of it. I think it ended up being like 36 counts of all different types of methods and of things as you do with body parts where they shouldn't be on other people. They gave him 8 years in prison.
8?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
8 years. And at the moment in time, I said, that's as many years as he tried to fuck me. Now you can go get fucked for 8 years. And I was okay with that.
Yeah.
Especially as I go to war and that changes my life. I have a unique perspective on like the death penalty and murder and things like that. That I think laws should be stricter. Killing people for sexual assault and abuse, that's another conversation. Like another.
Have to suffer.
I think you should be in a single room because we can afford it here in America and never see light or another human again.
Yeah.
And you just die miserably.
I agree.
And you get to think about all the shit you did to a fucking little person for eternity.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I
agree.
I would want for people. Mm-hmm. We're not going to give you the gracious gratitude of death.
It's too easy.
Fuck no. Not one bit. You get to relive it every day, just like that person relives it every day.
Right.
Because it doesn't go away.
Right.
How much it hurts goes away in time. And so I'm in college. I went on stand and defended myself and what happened to me. I was really, really proud of that.
Mm-hmm. Your mom's with you during all this?
Yeah. But I'm a senior in high school. Just to go back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When all this came out, the school was like, we're going to get Trevor out of school as fast as possible. And so I got out of school a semester early, but at that same semester, my senior year, my mom moves to West Lafayette, because my brother's already going to school at Purdue, where I am going to follow him. But I have one semester at home in a trailer park all by myself. After I just came out with all this stuff, like 12 months earlier, I'm just like sitting in this empty trailer, like drinking a 6-pack of beer every night, doing my homework and going to school on my own. Like
right.
I was like, what fucking kid keeps going to school? And there's nobody making him, like, there's no one at the school that's going to be like, oh, he didn't come to school today. I wonder why. Right. Like, he's going through the fucking worst time of his life.
Right.
But no, I went to school every single day. I had a job, and I just kept going and showing up every day. I don't know. No one made me do anything. I just, like, I don't know. I don't know why. It's who I am. I guess it's just the essence of my soul is I show up. I don't know. And that comes, like, I didn't get good grades in high school. I didn't get accepted into university when I applied.
Yeah, but you never had anybody show up for you.
Oh, yeah. Well,
at that point, you know?
So I'd never get an acceptance letter into Purdue. And my friend, Stu Lancy, I was living at the house before the semester started. And he's like, let's go down to the bursar's office and let's see if we can get you into school. So I walked in the middle of the summer and I was like, I want to go to school here. I got the money. I can afford it. Like, all right, you got to take this class. You got to go to the community college across the river, take a few classes there. If you get a 2.0 or better, we'll let you in. So someone showed up for me and they got me into school. Okay. Awesome. So my life at school began, and then, rush into fraternity and meet friends, and everything seems great. Well, I meet this gal and she gets pregnant, and I'm 20, and I'm like, I gotta show up. So I kind of drop out of school and I start working at the car factory in Lafayette, and I'm just going to work 60 hours a week to support this woman and this baby. And she goes home and tells her parents and mom and dad, absolutely not. We will cut everything off from you if you have this child. So I am like, I want this baby. I want a son or a daughter. No, she has an abortion. So at 20 years old.
After you already left school and everything.
Yeah. So I should have a 24-year-old kid in my life, and I don't. It's hard and sad. And because of that, I joined the Army. December of 2000. And
right before 01.
Yeah. And I meet another girl during this time. Her name's Kayla Hurst. She's a beautiful woman. And I go off to basic training, and like it's like this, college love that kind of like falls apart. But she had a huge soul and heart in her. She's kind of a hippie chick. Who means a lot to me. And so I get all done with all this basic training. I become a cook and stuff, which is like wild. Like now I was like, that's what you decided to do. Definitely the talent management portion of the Army at this point did not see me
right
and the potential that I had. They didn't put me on the right path. So I come home, and then 9/11 happens, and like there's this pounding on my door when it's going on, and I just like look at all my friends, and like I was like, it's finally happened to us, guys. Everywhere else in the world, there's terrorist attacks every day. It's unfortunate it happened to us, but like we got to get ready if we're gonna go to war. It fucking suck. To have that feeling like it's coming. And some people are cheering. Like I was excited. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get one of the reasons why I joined the Army. It's gonna happen, right? And that's to achieve this honorable death. Because inside me, even though I'm doing well in school, I'm a soldier now, I still didn't want to be alive.
Still there.
It's still there. But I felt suicide was an easy way, because I knew that if I committed suicide, that would be the first thing that anyone ever said about me. And I didn't want to be remembered as that. And that's hard, because I get called to go to Iraq in 2003, and I spend a few months down in Georgia, and then they're like, you don't need to go. We don't need your job. And I come back home. And after I come home, I'm living in a house with 3 of my friends, and my friend Sean Keeley is a kid from Michigan that is an Irish alcoholic. It's bipolar. It's in trouble with the law. That he's the type of guy that would, get drunk at the bar, walk home, and not realize he's at the wrong house, and can't understand why his key doesn't work to open the door, and like try to kick the door down, and the police get called on him.
So
and
he's a
like,
mess.
So he's a mess, and he just has these continuous problems with alcohol and drugs. And he's on probation, and he's living with us. And one night, his parole officer shows up. He's been drinking, and they give him a breathalyzer, and they're like, "You're drunk. You violated your probation." Oh. Not knowing what I know now, I know that his world just collapsed inside of him. And he got in his car and drove to Michigan and hung himself. So this is my best friend in the world dies. But there's something different that happens at this moment that I carry on. The grief process here wasn't alone. All the boys from the house came to see us every day. People spent time with us, telling stories, listening to music, and talking about what Sean meant to us. Right? And it wasn't a lonely grieving that I went through, where I think some people think that that's the best, is to get through really hard times alone.
Yeah.
And it's not the case.
It makes it so much darker, I think.
Yeah, it's okay to ask for help. People want to. And they'll be there for you. And they'll get you in the right spot. And so we dealt with all that together. And then Kayla Hurst gets murdered.
Oh, God.
So she switched schools. She's in the University of Ohio, and she is in a bad drug deal in a house where she shouldn't have been in. Her and her two friends were tied up and executed in their home. What the fuck, Trevor? I'm like, I don't know how much more I can fucking take in my life. Right? And this is where my friend Dave in the TED Talk says, you're the Michael Jordan of fucking trauma. Right? There's some levity to this conversation. Right? And at that point, I'm 23. So I have a fucking shit childhood. College has introduced drugs and alcohol. My best friend hangs himself. The girl that had taken my heart, right, is killed. And then I'm volunteer to go to Afghanistan.
You volunteered?
Yeah. And I have to go to the infantry school, and it's out in Arkansas, and I'm there, and it's a beautiful training area, and it's hot as hell during the summer because it's like June, and I'm there, and we're just doing 3 weeks of training, and it's learn about walking through the woods and using guns and how to shoot, right? Because I'm just a cook. I didn't really go
Right,
I went through basic training, right?
Yeah.
But they're but my commander Sean Eakin's hey, yeah, I want you to come with us to this trip. All right, I really want to go, because the last time I didn't get to go, and I told myself I'll never get called up again and not go. So I'm there, and while I'm there, there's a guy next to me. His name's Specialist Snyder, who's my bunkmate, the kind of thing. And I look at this kid dead in his eyes. And I said, you don't need to be going to Afghanistan. You're going to die. Or you're going to get someone else killed. Foreshadow for you. Right. And
what did he say to that?
Nothing, just 20 years old, whatever, Trevor, fuck you.
Yeah. Right.
So we get to Afghanistan in July of 2004. We're downtown Kabul. It's in the center of Afghanistan. There's not a lot that happens on this trip. There's a few firefights, gunfights, bangs, whatever you want to call it, at the front gate with just some, locals that just want to die. I think, I don't know. They weren't going to cause anything. It's suicide by police is what happened. I'm just tired of life, and they just shot at us.
Right.
It's nothing that I engaged in. But this time in Afghanistan changes me, because I go from Kabul, which is up in the center, to down south in Kandahar. And we get tasked on a missions mission set to do pay for the Afghan National Army to give them money for serving. And one of the places I go to is called Firebase Price, which is after Warrant Officer Price and whatever, who was killed in the beginning of Afghanistan war. What's there that changes my life is the Green Berets, the Special Forces guys. I didn't know anything about these guys and didn't even really know that. I knew that some Rangers existed, but it's different than that. And I was like, these are the guys that free the oppressed. And I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that so much since I was 16 years old, because I fought for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. I was like, these guys, there's 12 dudes in the middle of the desert that are convincing other people to fight for their country so that other Americans don't have to come here. And I was like, what am I have to do to be one of these dudes? Because I was like, I think I can change the world if I'm one of those guys. And then a few months later, right before we come home, we get a call on the radio saying that one of the trucks from our task force had hit an anti-tank mine right outside of Kabul, looking for like some area to do training at. And Specialist Snyder was driving that car, that pickup truck, and all 4 guys were killed instantly. And they brought their bodies back, and we had to carry their bodies on to the Chinook helicopter to send them home. It was really hard because I feel like I manifested that moment. And it just sits in me. And there's nothing I can do about it. So there's finding the thing I want to do most, but also there's a loss in humanity at the same time. Because not only did Americans die, I also had to see Afghan children that were molested, set on fire, and put acid on their fucking bodies because they ate during Ramadan.
Oh my God.
What the fuck people do this to little kids? And so there's the 3 things, right? There's cruelty to children, there's death of our brothers, and there's this ultimate, like, what I should become comes out of this trip. And on the way home, I'm just like, I'm going to come back here and I'm going to help people. And so I go back to school and I finish my degree in history and I study about the Middle East because I wanted to know, like, why are these people this way, and why is it they have all these problems, and what's with Islam and being Muslim and like all that, and Mecca, Medina, and these places in Saudi Arabia, and like, what's all that about? So I study a lot of that. And I graduate. But right before I graduate, I take one last class at school, and it's called Death and Dying.
Oh.
Because I thought this class was going to offer like grieving methods and stuff. What the class did offer me was this sweetheart of a lady. And her name's Sean, which is kind of funny because my brother's name's Sean.
Oh, really?
Right. So it's this funny thing. And so I end up meeting my like college sweetheart in this last class. This last class, Death and Dying. And I'm like, and it ends up being like an English class about grammar and spelling. And I get like answers wrong on tests because I can't spell deceased right.
Right.
Oh, it's just like whatever. But so my now wife is there, and this is the fall of 2006. And at that same time, I signed up to go on active duty because I was in the National Guard on that first deployment. And so she still had like 2 years left of school at that time. And I go directly into becoming a Green Beret as I signed up to go to Fort Benning. You know, I had already been a paratrooper, no big deal, and go straight into the pipeline to go to selection. And it was pretty cool.
That's
And
pretty awesome. So you were like determined. You're like,
Yeah.
I am going to be one.
Yeah. And so, but I got a lot of fire that I can use when it's really, really dim, right? No one else can see your fire. You're like, that's nice. It's a nice lead into the book title,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And that's all. There's a lot that you can discuss about that. But to think about the Q course, the qualification course to be a Green Beret is like 2 years long. And it's just nonstop training. And
Do you have to be selected?
yeah,
Like,
so you got to go through a 21-day selection process.
Okay.
And a majority of that is alone, right? You're walking, land navigation is by yourself. There's a team week portion, but that's really not. It's an individual event with other friends, essentially, that they construct these apparatuses to create pain and the desire to quit is it. And then with time to see how you treat other people. It's the easiest way I can say what it is.
Right.
You're fucking going to suffer. And
They just want to probably weed people out
yeah,
for that. Yeah.
It's, can we break you in 21 days?
Right.
And it's all mental, physical, all of it's there. And for guys with, in my opinion, that this is why a lot of special operators have childhood trauma, is because we don't care. It's like, there's nothing you will be able to do to me out here in this woods will ever fucking break me.
Right.
Ever.
I can see that.
And it's like, so I can think about the possibilities of life all day long while I'm walking through the woods or carrying hard things. And like,
Right.
are you going to still feed me? And I'm still going to sleep tonight. That's not that bad of a day. So I just, like, I'm made to feel uncomfortable. Whatever. Like, you just have to just like be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? And like, it's just part of it. And keep telling yourself that thousands of other people have done this before me. I can do it too. And that's about the amount of mental fortitude that you need to get.
How did you feel during it? Were you just, like you said, you can't break me kind of thing?
Yeah.
Were there times during those days where you're like, oh,
No.
I can't do this?
So the time there changes you as you start to get tired and as you get like exhausted from not eating enough food. It changes your perspective of the world. Like, we feel very like aperture way open right now.
Right.
But as that pressure is put on you, all you really see is like what's here in front of you.
Tunnel vision, yeah.
And that's it.
Okay.
And it takes a little bit of time, but I think all the guys that are Green Berets, they get to this point where they're like, this is what I have to accomplish, and this is all that matters. Nothing else in my life matters. And it's fun to be there because life doesn't really exist. It's a way of disassociating from the reality of the world.
Right.
And that's kind of like deployments are easier than being here because you're just so hyper fixated on something.
I've heard a lot of people say that.
The mission, the objectives that I'm trying to achieve, that's it.
That's it.
That's why I don't know how guys have kids and go to war, because I don't know how you do it.
Right.
Because there's a lot of heart there that I want to be there. I can't be in two spots in a way that feel like you're torn apart. So selection's not hard. It's just days that you got to put in to get to the end, and hopefully that you've shown enough to the evaluators and the cadre that are there that you've done all the things to get selected and to move on into the actual like qualification course. The whole entirety of the Q course is like phases and sections. And so you go out to this place, Camp McCall. It's on the outside of Fort Bragg in North Carolina. And you're there from 6 weeks, 4 weeks at times. And then you come home and you spend like the weekend drinking and partying and then going back out. And you do this thing over and over. For me, the hardest part was language school. I learned French, tried to, really bad at school. But I tried every day. I showed up. I kept on just going to class. I tried. I gave it everything I could. I just couldn't pass these tests. They're really difficult. But the leadership that was in charge of all of this just gave me another shot. Keep going at it, Trevor. And I once again, another person showed up for me.
Right.
Which is like, this is a big deal, right? There's people in my life keep being inserted into it to like get me,
right,
keep on keeping me going on when I feel like I'm failing or falling apart. There's someone there. So we get to the whole Q course and everything. I become a special forces communicator. I work with radios and computers and things like that. Then one of my friends, Jay Severe, is in this portion of this 18 Echo communicator course. And we go up to like one of the hardest parts of it. It's called max gain. And we have to carry these 100-pound rucksacks, and we got to send, FM communications from like here to like Arizona. I don't know, somewhere in the United States. It's really like a 5-day exercise that puts a lot of stress on us. We all make it through it, all of our friends and everything, we make it. And then we're going to Robin Sage, which is like the collex of everything to get your Green Beret and move on to being an Army guy. And our friend Jay is running on a treadmill and his heart explodes, dies instantly. Fuck. So all the boys.
In his 20s?
Yeah. So this is 2009. So we have to go to Austin, Texas to bury him. Already, right? Mm-hmm. Haven't even graduated. We're already putting soldiers in the ground. Hard. It's just like an accident that happens, and there's no answer to it. Mm-hmm. So we go to Austin, we have a great time, come home, and like that loss, that person was there to like, you can make it. And so Robin Sage is a real gut check of all of it, right? So from the beginning of the Q course to the end, it's like it stacks on each other. So in the beginning, it's just physical stuff, and it slowly interjects mental things into it. So now it's like this whole exercise of mental, physical, who you are morally and ethically is all being challenged throughout this whole 4-week exercise of Robin Sage. And it was phenomenal. It was awesome because like building rapport with people isn't hard for me to to conversate to anyone. Doesn't seem and be relatable. Is what you needed to be able to do there to be successful. So, that's great. It was awesome. I donned my Green Beret and I get married in December 2009 on the 19th. I'm in Afghanistan 20 days later. In a place I didn't want to be. So I work at the headquarters at Bagram. And so I get to see a different perspective of the war, though, because I was working for the colonel and I was traveling around with the generals. So I get to see how the fire bases are expanding and how many my friends are out fighting. And it's like a joint operations center. It's like huge screens and like hundreds of computers, right? And you can just see everything that's happening within the country.
Right.
And so every mission that's on it, like I'm looking through the names. Like all of my friends are there, and like I get to meet all the guys that are coming in the country because the commander wants to go out and see all the ODA guys and all the Green Berets that are coming in. And then like my friends start dying while I'm there, and I'm going to funerals again. And all I want to do is like be on an ODA and be there. Like I didn't do all this work just to be in the headquarters element.
Right.
It's like a 8-month deployment. I'm there, and I come home and I'm back in Afghanistan like the next February. Right. So I come home in September and I'm back in Afghanistan in February, and I'm there to December. Right. And this is my third rotation, probably my most significant hardship of deployments that I go on. And within the first like month we're getting in gunfights, but nothing like severe, just pop shots and weird things. But one of the very first villages that we walked through, we had met up with some A&A guys, and they walked through the center of the village, and we are on the outskirts of it. And me and my friend Jake are on top of this building on like the western side of the village, and we're like watching like the guys like walk through the village just to kind of pull security for them. And I just hear this loud explosion, and dust like goes into the air. I'm like, Jake, what the fuck was that? I've never seen anything like this before. He's like, I'm pretty sure that the guy just was evaporated in front of us. Then the same moment, I hear a single gunshot, and then the city erupts in gunfire. A Taliban member shoots a young girl in the head. Firefight takes, and me and Jake are just like at awe that this human being just was evaporated. My other friends are fighting. Some of them are trying to save this little girl. We have a helicopter coming in at the same time, pick her up, right? We save her. And it's really awesome that months later, like her dad came and thanked us for saving her life.
Wait, she lived?
Yes, we saved her.
Oh my God.
And then it's just a summer full of gunfights and killing. And this is how complex PTSD is created. PTSI, PTS, however you want to define it. I love all of it. Is that there's not a lot of alcohol to drink. So how do I get relief from what's going on? There's opium that we smoke every once in a while. I start taking diazepam a lot. There's a lot of Valium on the open market, and I just start chewing Valium like nothing. It's candy, just, and it just numbed it all. And I got used to doing that a lot, using substances like that to drain out all of the pain of the past and where I was currently at.
Right.
I fly home on my, what is this now? 2011, married 2 years. I come home on my second wedding anniversary. And I end up looking at my wife, and I had drinking a whole bottle of Jameson, and I chased it with Ambien.
Oh.
not good. And we have an argument, and it goes like this. You can't tell me what the fuck to do until you pay the mortgage. Right? And then I pass out in front of her and split my head open. And I come to in the bathroom, and my wife's like 105 pounds. And I'm bleeding everywhere. What the fuck is going on? Right? And that's when problems inside of me started to come back up again, because I'm drinking too much and I'm using different types of narcotics like tramadol, Ambien, and
you're not hyper focused anymore.
Right. So now I'm home, but we're back in Afghanistan 6 months later again.
Jeez.
Yeah. So this is my 4th deployment. And right before I came home from that last deployment, I tried a drug, whatever. It's a synthetic opiate that makes everything feel phenomenal. And I went back and I stuck everything into my veins I possibly could. I never got in trouble with it ever. I hid everything, I think, fairly well. Obviously, I'm still in the Army.
Yeah.
And I was managing all of that pain that was in me from a little kid to my friends dying, to the loss of loved ones, and my friends committing suicide. I just couldn't take it. It was so fucking hard. And the first time I ever stuck a needle in my veins was as much as exhilarating as the first time he touched me. It's the same feeling. The rush, the warmth. And that's really hard. And then shooting up becomes very methodical. And all of it feels phenomenal, of drawing medicine or filling up or seeing a flash of blood in the needle is something that once you do, you always want to have in your life. Which I can see why it's like so hard to get off of heroin. Because it's not.
I don't think that, and with me doing, over 20 years with addiction and psych and everything, what you just said, almost every single heroin addict I've ever come across says the same exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
They say the same exact thing.
Yeah.
That it's... So for me, that's why I always think to myself, but God, you guys all know this. It's like Russian roulette. Like, and you're doing that and you just never know. But if you do it one time, you're always going to want it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's where I struggle with addiction and addicts.
Yeah.
And
the thing is that my mind tells me it won't happen to me. I'm stronger than the drug. There's a lie in there, right? There's
just a little. Yeah, just a little.
But that voice that lies to you
mm-hmm.
is the same voice throughout all of the things of
mm-hmm.
addiction, of
Sure.
depression, of suicidal ideation. Sometimes it's just louder or
mm-hmm.
quieter at different times, and life tends to put pressure on one or the other. Yeah. Life's great. You don't hear it. Little things happen here and there. It's not so bad. You lose your house. It's screaming at you that you're an awful person. Might as well just go back.
Mm-hmm. So you're doing this while
mm-hmm.
you're there now.
Yeah.
Then what? I mean, like, how do you just stop, or you don't for a while?
So this synthetic opiate, I wasn't using heroin.
Okay.
There's a cap in it that you can only use so much in like a 24-hour period where your body, like there's a plateau.
Okay.
And you can't overdose. I essentially stopped using that drug because there was no more.
Oh, okay.
It's not accessible to get here in the States as easy. It's within the medical, but it's not like you can just.
So with what you just said, how did you go from there? You have this high, you have this feeling. Why didn't you, when you came back home, why didn't you do heroin or seek it?
So I got more into like Oxycontin.
Okay.
And tramadol and different opiates than, because I knew heroin would kill me.
Okay.
Probably. I think. Yeah. Well, I don't know. And so I come home from that 4th deployment. My wife gets pregnant with our daughter.
How is she doing during all this?
Yeah. So she is working. So my wife's a behavioralist, and she's working at an autism clinic around Raleigh, Durham.
Okay.
And she's also getting her master's at this point. The first 36 months that we were married, I was in Afghanistan for 25 months. Wow. I was never home.
Thankfully, she was really busy with school and
And so she was going to school, and every deployment she would design another room in our house, and that would get done, and then I'd leave and I come back and there's another room done, and she made a beautiful home for us. She just had a sick husband that you can't see it. She knows it's there, but it's not obvious. Mm-hmm. Right? That there's this sadness inside me that she knows exists, but it's not always around.
Right.
It was really good at
masking
keeping it, compartmentalizing a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go back again for like a 1-month thing to re-enlist in the Army, and I'm shooting up again there. Like, what crazy. And I come back home and I start to realize that something's not right. And I think my testosterone isn't okay. I'm like, what's going on? I need to go get sleep studies. I need to try and figure out what's really wrong. What is not right in me that's not what's really wrong. Right. And let me go search for all the things that could potentially be making me feel depressed and lethargic and not wanting to live. It has nothing to do with my past or how much I'm drinking. Not at all. Right. So I get all these tests done and all this stuff, and I start going to therapy, and I start talking about all this stuff that had happened as a kid and how it makes me feel. And I decide that like the ODA life isn't really for me at that moment, because my team sergeant was like, your daughter's on the way and you need to be home for her, because I wasn't home for my 2 girls, and I'm going to make that decision for you. His name's Benjamin Tabor. Mm-hmm. He, I think, saved me as a dad, and I truly honor it. But I applied to go get my master's degree at the same moment in time. And I didn't fully understand like what it meant to write a thesis or what it meant to learn about strategic studies at all.
Well, you had difficulty,
right?
You know, in school too.
It was Marshall McGurk, who is my commander. He's like, I think you do well. You know, you went to Purdue. Like, you have a history degree. You'll do fine. It's it's a 10-month program. You'll be able to go there. You won't have to do any Army stuff at all. Just go there and focus on that. I'm like, okay, all right, you convince me. But as I get into the school, I start to see the complexities of Washington, D.C. and politics. Is eyes wide open to
Right.
that whole diplomacy, intelligence, military stuff, economic stuff's all being shown and gathered into my brain about this, and I'm not really happy with what I'm learning, and it really starts to spiral me down into those people in Washington don't care about us service members at all. They just were leverage for them to inflict pain onto other countries. And it just spirals me down into like, at this moment, I start drinking like bottles of wine. From college, I knew I couldn't drink liquor because I drink it like beer. And it really, really puts me over.
Right.
Like, extremely drunk. And I didn't want to get overboard, right? I'm trying to stay in that middle portion, and beer allows you to do that a lot easier than shots of liquor. So
Is wine in the middle? Wine's in the middle.
yeah, wine's there because wine helps you write
Ah.
a lot. And there's a lot in this program. There's a lot of writing that's needed to be done, and it lets this language flow, right? And then I would edit drinking coffee the next day at a coffee shop. So all right, I have my childhood shit. I got war shit that I've killed people. I'm learning about politics and what's happening in America and the way that we fight wars and what it all means and who we are. And I go on like a bender for like 3 days. And I'm in my car at Fort Bragg I stop in front of the hospital. I'm drunk. And I'm like, I have two options here. Either I'm going to go onto the drop zone and kill myself somehow, or I'm going to walk.
So you're deep again.
Yeah, not good.
Okay.
Right, because I'm like, I've been drinking too much, and as I hit like the third day of being drunk, the world starts to become black inside me, and I don't see any value for me to live. And there's a discussion about risk management that we have within the Army that sees threats. And as I drink a lot, I start to see myself as a threat to my kids and my wife.
Okay, Trevor, you have a hell of a story. So this is going to be part 1. We're going to cut it off here and then start part 2.